Welcome to a special edition of Crawford County Outdoors. I'm Dwayne Kohler, and we are at the Woodcock Wildlife Center today, and we're going to learn about fly fishing. So stick with us, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming out this morning. My name is Mark Signorino. The official title is a Fly Fishers International Certified Casting Instructor. I'm one of 21 in the state currently. The testing involves 16 different tasks for an actual cast, 6 teaching tasks in addition to a written exam. The failure rate for the test is over 50%. I'm one of those over 50%. I failed it the first time I took it. So passed my exam in September of 2017. And have been teaching these programs since the summer of 2015, so this is my 11th year doing this. Last year I was given the opportunity to do casting demonstrations and speaking engagements and group lessons at national shows. So that's been my greatest thing I've been able to accomplish in the industry, is to do national shows and get my name out there nationwide, which is kind of neat. Locally, I'm from Erie. I'm involved with a tying group in Erie. It's the Gem City Outdoorsman's Fly Tyers. We tie once a week. We were down here in April for a tying demonstration. We do a lot of community outreach. We go to the Pymatuming Hatchery Open House in April, and we do a couple kids events through the year. And we just go out and about. If somebody wants us to come out and demonstrate fly tying, we're there. I also do speaking engagements at local and regional shows, and I do private casting lessons. I'm involved with the Sons of Lake Erie, big fishing group in Erie, almost 3,000 members, the largest single fishing group in the state, and I really like to brag about them. Again, I'm only a member, but they were the first fishing group in the country that started a program where you could walk into a library with your library card, take out a fishing pole, walk across the street, get a can of bait, and go out fishing. There's other groups that do that now, but the Sons started that several years ago. I also have 11 and a half years experience in a retail fishing store. So that gives me a good background on conventional gear, multi-species, and what's going on within the fishery, because people want to come in and they're always ramping up and gearing up for what they're targeting that day or that weekend. So I know what's going on, I know where people are fishing at, I know what lures they're using, what gear they're using. So that's kind of cool. So we'll get rolling with the program. Has anyone had any experience with fly rods at all? I'm thinking 2. Okay, 3.
From your last program.
Right. So I'm going to start this program, and I do very basic, very simple information. I will give you a lot of information. There's only about 3 or 4 things that you really need to remember, but I'm going to give you a lot of information. Not everything has to be memorized, but I want you to understand that you don't have to spend a lot of money on gear in order to go out and fly fish. This particular setup in front of us is about $1,400. I was casting one of the rods that we're going to be using a little bit later. It was, what did I say it was, 90 for the whole setup? 130. It was $90 for the reel and the line and $45 for the rod. So you don't have to spend a lot of money in order to fly fish. But people like to buy expensive gear and show their friends. So the single biggest difference between conventional fishing, which spinning rod, bait caster, trolling, is I'm going to use that term as conventional, and fly fishing is when you're using conventional gear, you're casting the weight of your lures and your split shot. With a fly line, you're actually casting the mass of the fly line, and that's going to be important. We're going to be touching base on that several different times. So everyone's going to run their hands through this. Now you're going to feel a taper in the big line, and you're going to feel a 3-part taper here. And you can feel that. And I want everyone to feel that. The white taper is not going to be as easy to feel. And I'd rather have you listen to what I have to say, and when there's something that you need to write down, no, this is the important part. No, seriously, this is the important part here. It's snagging.
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong? So you feel a taper, and then you feel that 3-part taper. So that's going to be important. Okay, you feel the taper there. This is a fly line that someone gave me, and I cut it up. It's difficult to show, but you can feel a little bit of a differential from here to here. Usually these tapers go about 10 feet. I didn't want people standing there and grabbing onto 15 feet of line. So everyone did feel the mass, and everyone did feel the taper. This is the important thing. So everyone talks about, I have a fly rod, it's a 9-foot 5-weight. I don't know what that means. So the 5-weight is a unit of measure. So they take the first foot of this fly line and they cut it off. Then they go out here for 30 feet and they will measure it. They'll put it on a scale. And the unit of measure, you can either use grains, grams, or ounces. So I use nice round numbers. You don't need to write this down, but you'll want you to understand it. A 5-weight line weighs 140 grains plus or minus 6. So it goes anywhere from 134 to 146. 6 weights 160, 7 weights 185, and 8 weights 210 grains. So the big difference with that is going from a 5-weight to an 8-weight, the physical line is 50% more mass. So which means the line itself has to be larger. That makes sense. So the reel that holds it has to be physically larger, and the rod is going to be physically larger because it's more mass, it's going to be bending the rod more. That makes sense, okay? So the good visual for that is, this is a 4-weight, this is a 5-weight, and this is a 6-weight. Everyone can see that it gets slightly larger. So that's a good visual. So the numbering system for the weight of the rod makes sense. That's good? Okay. And the sad part about this is these are really expensive reels I don't fish with anymore. Yeah, I love these reels. I'm not saying buy anything in particular that I'm showing you. There's certain brands I like, and I love those, but I've gone on to other stuff now. So they sit in my case. I pull them out 4 times a year for these classes, 6 times a year for the classes. So we'll start from the very end. So the fly rods are going to be set up a little differently from conventional gear. Does anyone walleye fish? Any experience with walleye fishing? Okay, so when you set up a walleye rig, you know you have backing and you have line on the walleye setup. You have something similar here. You have backing on the fly reel. It does 2 things. It makes the arbor physically larger, and it also gives you additional line. So standard fly line is 90 feet. So when you put backing on, you're going to go anywhere from 75 to 100 yards of line. So you're going from 30 yards to 130 yards. So in case fish take off, or if you want to cast distance, you can do that. So the backing itself is this. It looks very similar to braid in the fishing world. The big difference is that this is not slippery, but that's 20-pound brake strength. It doesn't feel like much, does it? So you can do 20, you can do 30, 40, and up to 50. And they have gel spun, which is Kevlar. That's primarily used for saltwater. So some of the big saltwater reels you'll get into will have 350, 400 yards of backing, because when fish take off in the ocean, they take off. They don't like hooks in their mouths because they're the alpha predators. They don't want to be attacked by someone. So you can see the little white, can everybody see the white stripe in there? Yeah. Or we can go, can you see the white on the inside of that? Okay. And they all have backing, but unfortunately this one has orange backing with orange line, which I didn't set that one up too well. This one just has a little bit inside, where this one has a little bit more. So let me take this one apart, and I'll show you the backing on the inside. Backing to me is very important because I like my reels and rods to balance. So I can hold it with a single finger. So you're not putting excessive strain on your arm holding the rod tip up or holding the rod tip down. So when I put backing on my reels, I use it to balance. I use it for weight to balance. It makes it very, very comfortable to hold and to cast for longer periods of time. And for me, I was a competitive caster for 5 years. It gives me extra distance when the rod's properly balanced. So there's a lot of things going on with the backing, but you can see the white stripe down in there. So this rod was specifically set up. I don't remember exactly how much backing is on there, but the rod's balance. So the backing makes sense why we have that on there. So we go to the fly line. The fly line, the way it's designed, I have a couple different pictures here. So years ago, they did this thing I like to call it the pantyhose theory. And people always laugh. And the way I explain this is, with pantyhose, they know how to make pantyhose that doesn't run. But somebody said, why should we do that? Because we'll never sell it. Let's make pantyhose that you wear twice and it runs, so you gotta buy more. It's like appliances today. They last 5 years and you gotta buy a new appliance. You do the same thing with fly lines. So the traditional fly lines many years ago were called level lines. So you felt the taper on that white line. So there's a flat spot for about a foot. You have a taper up and you have a belly, you have a taper down, and that's it. That's the whole line. So there's a lot of mass there, very easy to cast. Specific cast, it's really great to do. So when the taper got all messed up years ago, people would take the fly line off, flip it, and use the other taper. And companies said, we want to sell more lines. We don't want to do that. So what they did, instead of having this belly the full length, they have a taper down and they have really, really thin line called running line. So when this front taper gets goofed up, you got to replace the line. So this is just a cheat sheet from something I borrowed off the internet to show you what different fly lines look like. These are all specialty lines. So this is flat and level. This is a specialty line for steelhead because it's got a lot of mass on it in a certain section. And this is a traditional weight forward line. You don't really need to see it, but I want you to have the understanding of flat spot, taper up, belly, taper down. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people set their lines up backwards, and they say the rod doesn't cast because they have this going out to the fly, the flat line. It's not as big, not as much mass, it's going to be more difficult to cast. You want to make sure that it is set up properly. And again, this is another specialty line on the bottom, so I wanted to give you a couple different ideas. Now it's, this one. The neat thing about this 30-foot rule with the grains, grams of ounces, it doesn't matter what the number of the line is. So if I'm running a 7 weight or a 10 weight, it's going to be that many grains, grams, or ounces. But if you see this is black. So this particular line has tungsten powder impregnated into it. And it's going to sink at 3 inches per second. And in order to do that, they make the line really, really, really tiny. Because again, that first 30 feet, it doesn't matter how heavy that is, it's going to weigh that much for the 7 weight or the 10 weight. Which is kind of neat. It's just that the line is going to be much smaller because of the amount of mass. If it's what they call a floating line, which are the typical fly lines, it's plastic with little microscopic bubbles in them. That's what makes it float. So that's why the white one here is larger, because it's got the microscopic bubbles in it. If this was a sinking line, it would be significantly thinner and it would be dark. I'll give you this disclaimer. That is a specialty line. I dive down into rabbit holes on occasion just to give you an idea of the different things that are out there. Not trying to confuse you, but just so you understand what's available. I sat through a seminar a couple years ago, 4,000 different fly lines available on the market. Yeah, we talked for 2 hours and I left with questions. But there's a lot of stuff out there. So when you walk into a fly shop, bait store, and you see all these lines up there, I can explain very simply how to break it down and what you're actually looking for. So when I started doing the little items to hold and people to look at, I grabbed this one. And no one can see the numbers because it's so small. So what I did was, I said, oh, I have these, and these are easier to see. So I'll let everybody take a look at the numbers, and they're much easier to see. So what this means, WF, weight forward. So you have the belly section on the front, and you have the running line on the back. So yeah, you could write this one down. So weight forward, this is a 6, so this is a 6 weight, so it's 160 grains, and the F means it's a floating line. Actually, these two lines go on the same rod. I have 2 reels, and I have them set up differently because I'm that much of a nerd. I don't just change spools out. This one is WF6FS3. So the first 10 feet of this sinks at 3 inches per second, that black line. But the exact same line going on the same rod, same weight, but this line will be black and it will be significantly smaller. So I'm the person saying, if you're just getting into this, not to confuse you, you can buy a combo which would come with everything that you need, or buy a simple basic line. Don't buy the least expensive one, buy something halfway decent. There's several reputable brands out there. Again, these are not endorsements, these are just the ones that I use. There will be a ton of information on lines. Okay, yeah.
Say someone brand new went to the store to purchase this stuff. Is there anyone around that can help them set it up
Yes.
initially?
Yes.
Because
Yep.
trying to remember.
Yeah, the store that I work at, when people come in and they're new, I suggest that they buy combos. So with the combo, you get the rod, you get the reel, you get the line, you get the backing, you get a leader system, and you get a case. And those go anywhere from $160 to $250, $300. That's really the easiest way to do this. And I'm not going to be brand specific, I'm not going to plug the store, but you can go in and buy something reasonably well made that you're going to be happy with for a long time. As you start to increase your fly fishing skills, you're going to want to get different rods for different species of fish. At that point, you can buy individual rods, individual reels, set up the lines, and that's why this is important. You know, you can walk into a fly shop and there'll be 50 to 60 lines there, and you'll look at it and go, I don't know what to buy. But if you break it down this way and say, I know I'm going to be fishing for trout or panfish, so I want a 5-weight. You want to look for something that's, you know, weight forward with a 5-weight and something with a floating line. You don't really need the specialty lines. It's not necessary, it's more difficult to cast, and they're a lot more money. So weight forward with the number and the F for the floating. And again, I can talk, all the subject matters I talk about, I can talk about for hours. So the lines, that pretty simple, pretty basic information. Questions on the lines? Okay. So with the rods are actually proportionate to the reels and the lines. So when you're running conventional gear, you know you have ultralight rods for trout, and you have your basic rods, and you have your surf casting rods, and your catfish rods. The catfish rods are really stout and very large, and the ultralights are very small in your basic rods. So it's the same thing. As the line gets bigger, the rods for fly rods will get larger also. This is the exception to the rule. This rod is fiberglass. So fiberglass is traditionally heavier and larger. So the neat thing about fiberglass, most rods are graphite. You can't do that. Whoops, almost got you there, slipped out of my hands. Can't do that with a graphite rod, you'll break it. But what's nice about this is when we start talking about the casting later on, with the bending of the rod, this is much easier to see the bending of the rod. So I use this as a teaching tool. So when I talk about the bending and the unbending, which is the term is loading and unloading, you'll be able to see it much better. So what questions have we got? Anything on the numbering system? Backing's pretty easy. The fly lines, I can talk for an hour. I don't want to, but I could. So there's a lot of information there. So again, it's important for me when you are a beginner to match up your line size to the reel size to the rod size. Everything will match. As you get better, a little bit more experience, some people will change things up. A lot of people will buy very expensive rods that don't bend at all, and they like the visual of a rod that bends more. So they put an extra heavy line on it so the rod will actually bend more. And I go, that's great, but why don't you just buy a rod that doesn't bend as much? So everyone's got a different opinion. I'm just offering you suggestions on what to look for. So now we get into our leaders. This is important because as you make your cast, the longer the line gets out, the less energy it takes. There's a rolling process. There's two equal legs, and this unrolls and comes out and presents the fly. It doesn't just shoot straight out. So as you get that line out, you need less and less and less energy. So that taper in the fly line that we all felt, and then this taper here. Now, this line is specifically designed on purpose. Everyone felt the 3 different pieces, and everyone sees the knots with the tag ends. So I do that on purpose as a visual, and so you can actually feel it. Now I'll explain it. This is 20-pound test. This is 15-pound test. This is 10-pound test. So when you have leader systems, which are these, it's going to be a 3-part taper. You've got the butt section, you've got the belly section, and you've got what they call the tippet section. And it's one continuous piece. It doesn't have the knots, doesn't have the tag ends. Again, I do that so people can actually see the visual and feel it also. So most tapered leaders that you're going to buy are either going to be 7.5 feet or they're going to be 9 feet in length. And this is the stuff you want to write down. So, and I have to put this up there so that everyone can see it. Okay. So when you buy leaders, there's more leaders available than there are fly lines, which is kind of sad. So there's 2 things involved here. So the first number you're going to look at is 9 feet. The overall length of the 3-part leader system is 9 feet. The second one is 7.5 feet. Again, we had this discussion on the car on the way down. And the third one is also at 9 feet. This is where it gets important. The top one says 4x, the middle one says 2x, and the bottom one says 0x. I call it aught. So this is kind of cool. Take that number, subtract it from 11. It gives you a cross section in thousandths of an inch. So anytime you're dealing with 4x line or tippet, it's 7 thousandths in diameter. The physical size is not important. What's important is most manufacturers will suggest that when you tie this together, you could tie in aught to aught, aught to 1, or aught to 2. If you go aught to 5, the really big line and the really small line, when you tie the knots together, it can potentially pull out because the line will be too small. So that's important to remember. So when I build my leader systems, I like to build 4 and 5 different tapers. So I run 7.5 foot 2x, and then I will add additional line to it. So this is also important because it's all about your hook size for the type of fish you're after. Take that number, multiply it by 3, that gives you a suggestion for the size of the hook. So if you're running 4x, you can run size 12 or size 14 hooks. If you're running 2x, you can run size 6 or size 8. If you're running aught, that's big hooks. So when I fish for trout and for steelhead, I will run 2x and I will add 4x onto it. Because 4 times 3 is 12, I run size 14 hooks. I tie a lot. I buy my hooks in volume and I tie a lot. So everything I tie for trout and steelhead is size 14, and I run 4x. It's very simple. Now, we'll take a break from the leader systems, and I'll explain something slightly different. There are, in the conventional fishing world, there are 3 different types of lines that are available. There's monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braid. Braid is the material that's very similar to the backing, which only it's very slippery. 0 stretch, very, very strong, very, very thin line. 30-pound braid has the same cross-section equivalency of 8-pound conventional line. So when you're buying a reel and it says I can put 200 yards of 8-pound test, you can put 200 yards of 30-pound braid on. That's good information to know. So this 3-section, the butt, the belly, the tippet section, when you tie on flies, eventually you're going to get to a point where the leader system is going to start to grow. It's going to get bigger. And you don't want that to happen. You want the smallest leader system that you can possibly have next to your fly. So they have stuff called tippet. And this is, again, this may or may not be important enough to write down. So there's mono and fluoro in tippet. Mono is great because it's got a very, very, very slow sink rate. It takes 95 seconds for mono to sink for 1 meter. So if you're fishing on top, when you see guys going out for trout and they're talking about dry flies, they're normally running mono line because the mono will sink much slower and it's more likely to stay on the surface. Fluoro is much more dense. It's got a 0.97 light refraction to water, so it's almost invisible. It's very abrasion resistant. It's also very stiff, so the knots are more difficult to tie. but it's also dense and it takes 31 seconds to sink 1 meter. So if you're fishing on the top, you run a full mono leader system, and if you're fishing below the surface, because I'm cheap, I'm going to run this on top and then tie in my fluoro to go subsurface. And as you can see, this one's empty because I've run a lot of 4X. But that's going to be your main difference. Does that make sense on the leader systems? So I have a couple reels I can show you. I actually had one last week. Someone said, well, I don't get it. And I pulled out a 12-foot leader that's 5 different tapers. And everybody got confused, and I said, this does this, and that does that. And they all kind of went, oh, that makes sense. So for me, what I do is I take a 7.5 foot 2X and I tie on 4X. And I usually run 10 to 11 feet because I'm a glutton for punishment with an 8-foot rod. Most people will suggest to run your leader length the same line, same distance as your rod. I like to run a little bit longer because it's more of a challenge. I'm always trying to push myself, always trying to challenge myself. So I will run a 5 taper section, and I'll run 10, sometimes up to 12 feet, which is pretty crazy, but it's kind of what I do. This is usually the one that stumps people. What questions do we have on the leader systems? Everybody's really quiet. You're either really confused or I'm really teaching well.
So what would you recommend for something to start out with? So say I bought a combo and I wanted to buy my leader system, what would you recommend I buy?
Very simple. Whatever leader system comes with the combo outfit, use that and then figure out what size hooks you're going to use and buy the tippet for the size hooks. And then just tie it on. Because you can actually go out with it. The combos that we have are stuff that I just walk into a store and I've purchased. You can actually tie that on and tie on about 6, 7 flies until the taper gets a little bit bigger. At that point, you want to add on the tippet. And do I have tippet? So to give you an idea, if anybody wants to grab this, this is what they call indicator tippet. An indicator tippet you use in place of a bobber. So that is 3X, which is 8 thousandths. The tippet that I use to fish with is smaller than that, which is why I have the cheater lenses so I can actually see to tie the knots. But it's actually smaller than that. But that's 3X. And I tie this in the middle instead of using a bobber. But in fly fishing, we don't use the term bobber. We use the term indicator. Does anybody know why? Because we're fly fishermen and we're better. So I'll say it this way. Does anyone know the difference between an indicator and a bobber? $4. Bobbers you can get for $1. Indicators will cost you about $5.
That's hilarious.
But and I'm not wrong, you can use this and tie it into your leader system. So for me, it's easier to cast and it doesn't splash when it hits the surface. So there's less surface disturbance, less likely to spook the fish.
Let's go back in time. Say more about this. I'm trying to think of a setup.
Okay.
I'm fishing one of the Erie trips.
Yep.
And I'm fishing with an 8-weight.
Yep.
The water is somewhat cloudy. Maybe I'll use a 3X
Yep.
for a 14 hook. Tell me a little bit more about the indicator line.
I'm going to do that right now.
Yeah.
So.
And tippet rings too.
You dived down into that rabbit hole that I was hoping you'd avoid.
So let's avoid that.
No, I'm going to actually discuss it. So, this is my Euro nymphing rod. Euro nymphing rod are, it's very, very long, very, very light lines that are used to catch a lot of fish. Okay. And it's specialty stuff. They actually have competitions with this. So, you want to do the touchy feely, or let me just explain it?
Oh, I think we all want to show and tell. Yeah.
Okay. So, this is a 3-weight. This is a 3-weight line. The reel is a 5 to 6 weight reel because the rod is so long it has to balance. It took me 45 minutes to do this. I put 85 yards of 50-pound backing on here, doing it 25, 25, and then 25 and 10. I want it to balance. But when you hold the rod, you can hold it with one finger. It's a 10-foot long rod. So the way this is set up, boy, I hope you've got a mute button on that. I keep dropping all this really expensive stuff. Why am I waking you up? So the first leader here is a 7.5 foot 2X. And it's going to come down to right there. So can everybody see that tag? Can you see that little tag on there? So I'm out fishing with my buddy one day, and he looks at me and goes, "That knot looks horrible. I can see that tag from here." Can everybody see that tag sticking up?
That's why you want it.
Exactly. And I go, "Yeah, I can see it too." You can see it? That's why it's there. So over the years, they've done a couple different things. This is indicator tippet. And we see the two different colors. You can see the two different colors there? So this is indicator tippet. So you're not going to splash when you're casting this. Plus, with this up here, I can see it even when I'm looking into glare. So it's kind of cool. So I like to run at least 2 colors. This one happens to be set up with 3 colors. So this is mono, and this is mono. So this is going to stay above the surface. Now you dove down into that rabbit hole. There it is. Okay, so a lot of manufacturers will tell you not to tie mono to fluoro together because mono is very soft and fluoro is very stiff. You can actually tie the two together and actually pull them apart and actually slice through the line. I've done it twice. I've told people that. I have to tie it with 12-pound test before it'll actually slice through. Lighter line for me has never worked. But when I do 12-pound, I explain, I sit there and go, and I can slice through the knot. So the way to avoid that is everyone's familiar with what a swivel is, right? So with a swivel, you've got the center section that spins, and on each side you've got that little tiny ring. So in the fly fishing world, we're using the ring only, and it's called a tippet ring. These are the greatest things ever. You've heard that it's better than sliced bread, but Betty White's better than sliced bread because Betty White's older than the invention of sliced. These are better than Betty White. So I got to find it. So can you see the tippet ring? Can you see the tippet ring? And you already know what that is because you asked about it.
That's wild, okay.
And you can see the tippet ring. And you can see the tippet ring. So what I do is I do the exact same leaders, exact same flies for trout and for steelhead. There's 2 differences. The knots are different and the tippet ring. So this is a 2mm tippet ring for trout and a 3mm tippet ring for steelhead because this is a 25-pound test for trout and it's a 45-pound test for steelhead because it's going to be a physically larger ring. This is 2mm. The bigger ones are 3mm. You don't need to write it down. They're small, medium, large. But here, from here down, this is fluoro. And I have one split shot on there that I didn't want to take it off because I used a single-use split shot. But this is going to be below the surface of the water, and this is going to be above the surface. So I didn't tie the mono to the fluoro together. I used a tippet ring. So a lot of people, instead of tying it and then making this shorter, shorter, shorter with a knot, they just cut that off and then add more fluoro, and then when it gets too short, they cut it off and add more fluoro. And from here up, you're not compromising the integrity of your leader system. So when you look at this and go, okay, what's he doing here? This leader system is 12 feet long with a 5-part taper. So you have a 7.5 foot 2X. And then from here, this is your indicator tippet, which is 3X. And then my fluoro, which is subsurface, is 4X. So I'll give you this disclaimer. Please, please, please don't do this when you start out. You're going to get very confused. What I'll suggest is get a combo, get 1 spool of tippet based on your hook size. And then after you tie on 3 or 4, tie on a couple feet of tippet. And that'll make your life significantly easier once you sling pack and slicks like 6 that I carry on my waders because I don't want to run out. And I have extra inside the bag, so I usually carry about 14 spools of tippet. But I know other guys that will carry 8, and they'll have 1 of every single size. They'll just have 8. So, did that answer your question on the leader? Let's see if I can actually pick this up without dropping it again. So the cool thing about this reel, again, very, very expensive, but no drag system. It's what they call a click and pull. So line gets pulled off and line gets reeled back on. There's no drag to this at all. But because it's a 3-weight, you're only catching stock trout. You don't need a drag system for this. It's very simple, very easy, very, very cool. One of my favorites. Did that answer your question about the leader system?
I think so.
Okay. So when you say, I think so, you make me nervous.
I'm more of a, I need to get out there, I need to touch it, I need to play with it, I need to
Yeah.
play with it.
So you felt the whole thing, did it? So that's literally it. So all I'm going to say is the leader system is based on the size of the fly at the smallest section. So with a 9-foot 4X, you can run 12s and 14s. So I'll offer you this suggestion. I see people that come into the store, they buy a combo and they go out and they tie a giant fly on it that big and they come back in an hour and the entire leader system is knotted up like 3 cats played with it. And I look at them and go, I don't know how to cast. Oh no, I know what I'm doing. The rod's no good. Okay. The leader is too small. The fly is too large. The first time they make a cast, it has stretch to it. It's 15 to 20% stretch. It'll actually stretch out. It'll come back. When it comes back, it goes into a ball like I showed you earlier. I did that on a cast and I had to untangle one of my leader systems this morning because I was test driving all the rods before we used them and it tangled up. I had to untangle it. But the leader systems and the lines will actually stretch and then they'll come back. So there's a certain amount of elasticity. But if you have the right size fly with the right amount of weight, it's not going to stretch out and come back and tangle. So that to me is important. And I just want people to go out and fish and not have problems. That's really the ultimate goal. I want you to have a basic understanding of what the numbers mean. I don't want you to be intimidated by them, but if there's 2 or 3 things that are really, really important, you have to understand why. The same size rod to the reel for the weight of the line, your leader systems, why that's important, and how to match up the leader system to the fly are the really, really important things. So what questions have we got? You're good? Okay. Anybody else? Questions? Lots of information, huh? So let's put this away. And I keep stepping on the cables, and I knew that I would.
Mark, I do have a question.
Yes.
Like a 3-weight, a 5-weight, an 8-weight. Like,
Yes.
Talk to me about common fish in Pennsylvania or common places I would go fishing, and what might just be the easiest setup if I'm just getting started.
So I'm the person, 2, 3, 4, 5 is going to be trout. 5, 6 is going to be panfish. 6, 7, 8 is going to be bass. 7, 8 for steelhead. 9, 10 will be pike muskie. You can run an 8-weight. 8-weight's a little bit light. That's my opinion. That's my suggestion. So when I fish for trout, I'm running 3, 4, 5s. When I'm going after panfish and small bass, I'm running a 6. So when I'm running what they call bait fish patterns that replicate small fish that fish are already eating, I run a 7-weight. When I'm going after large bass with large flies, I run an 8-weight. When I go after steelhead, I run a 7-weight, but the rod is longer with a softer tip. So what's cool about steelhead, again, another rabbit hole, you can actually take a very, very light leader system and catch a very large fish if your rod is longer with a soft tip. You ever heard the term noodle rod?
Sure.
You ever see what a noodle rod does? A noodle rod will flex the way this one flexes, and you can land 10-pound fish on 2-pound test with a noodle rod. Because what happens is when the rod bends, eventually the rod will bend here and the fish is fighting this butt section and the handle. So they're not fighting this, they're fighting down here. And this is going to tire them out. And you can run 1 or 2 pound tests and land giant fish because this is what they're fighting against down here. So I'm the person that always suggests people for steelhead to run a longer rod that's very, very soft. My steelhead rods that I run personally are 10-foot 7-weight rods, and then I run a 10-foot 8-inch 6-weight. It's a specialty rod. It's that high sticking rod, but it's designed for steelhead, and it was tested for a year. They did the R&D for king salmon up on Lake Ontario. that you should be running a 10, 11 weight. They were landing them on 6s. And I went, if it's good enough for king salmon, it's good enough for our stalked steelhead. So that's just a suggestion. So when you walk into a shop, what you're going to find is 9-foot 5-weight combos, which are great for trout and panfish. I'm of the opinion that if you're fishing trout, use the tapered leaders. If you're fishing panfish, you're going to use bigger flies, change out the leader to straight line. I run 14 to 15 to 17 pound straight line for panfish. Because you don't need that taper because it's not a small fly, it's a large fly. When you run a big fly with that taper and you're casting any amount of distance, the taper has a tendency to possibly break. So you're going to lose more flies. But with straight line, you're not going to lose as many flies.
Is there any danger to running something like a high visibility line, like a copolymer panfish, like?
Fish can see it.
Okay. That's a good answer.
A lot of guys like to run the high vis line. See, the high vis copolymer, you're talking two different things.
Okay, yeah, teach me.
So high visibility means that the line has, the line has color to it. So you're going to get either chartreuse or the pink. Chartreuse and pink are normally used by guys at night that are going after catfish so they can actually see the line. Copolymer is actually a thing that's come into prevalence in the last few years, which I love selling copolymer line. So a copolymer line it's used primarily in conventional fishing. So it's a monocore with a fluoro coating. So it gives you a little bit of invisibility and a little bit of abrasion resistance, but because it's got that monocore, the knots are still easier to tie because the line's very soft. So it gives you the best combinations of both types of lines. I prefer fluoro when I'm subsurface, but because it's so stiff, you have to really, really practice your knots. One man's opinion that's been selling it for 11 years. I don't get a lot of people that come back and yell at me. My customers seem to be very, very vocal, so I try my best not to upset them. Did that explain the leaders better? Do you have a warm, fuzzy feeling about it now?
Oh yeah, can't wait to get out there.
Okay. So what we're going to be using is a 9-foot aught with a tapered leader. That's what most of the rods are going to have. And the reason being is it's the biggest tapered leader you can use, and I don't want to break off leaders, and I don't want them getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So when the combos are first set up, it's whatever shows up on the combo. But once they break and get short, I replace them with a 9-foot aught. This particular leader on this one's a 9-foot aught, which has a couple knots in it, but it happens. So we're good on the numbering system. We're good on the lines. We're good on the backing. We're good on the reels. The reels, you can spend a lot of money on reels. For me, reels hold line. You don't need to spend a lot of money unless you're fishing for steelhead. You want to invest a little bit more money in the reel, something with a better backing, or not backing, better drag system. And more backing because the fish will take off and they'll run. You might run all 90 feet of line and go, oh geez, I need more line, so you need that extra backing. Or if you're fishing on the beaches out into the lake, they'll take off and run, so you need more than 90 feet of line. Yeah, that's always fun. So we good. Questions? One last tip, one last thing. Here's my pro tip of the day. So when you buy your tippet and you have your 5 or 6 spools together, the same brand will lock together. And these are 2 different brands, they won't lock together. So these are 3 different brands. None of them lock together because they're all different. But if you buy the same brand, you can go click, 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 and then because I'm OCD, I have 2X, 3X, 4X, 5X. And there's little bands that actually have the numbers on the outside, so you can actually line them up. You don't have to look at the labels on the inside. So there's actually spool holders, you can have like 6 or 7 here. I can only carry 6 because mine have spaces because they don't click together and lock. So mine always have space in between. So, and again, it's not an endorsement. My favorite tippet I don't use because I haven't used up the last spool. But once that's empty, I'm going to go to a brand that I found that I really like because it's very, very strong for the actual size of the tippet. And you'll figure that stuff out. We good? Okay, we're going to talk about a bug's life. I had these papers, and they're right here. So when you're fishing for most species of fish, fish eat fish. So a lot of people use minnows. So when you're tying flies, you're going to use flies that look like bait fish, minnows. So you can do that. If you're fishing for trout, there's bugs that are in the water that you're trying to replicate with your flies. The three main types of bugs that are in the water, you've got mayflies, caddisflies, stoneflies, are going to be your three types of bugs. And they're all very different, and they're very easy to pick out the differences. I'll go with the easy one first. Stoneflies have 6 legs, and they have little antennas on the front and the back. And what happens is they live on the bottom side of a rock. They come up to the top. Stoneflies will actually crawl over to the edge of the stream, come out where the rock is up out of the water. They'll break out of their exoskeletal shell. They'll fly away, boom chicka boom boom. They come back down. When they die, they're called a spinner. So when they're in their nymph stage, which is when they come out from the bottom of the rock and they're crawling, the stoneflies crawl along the bottom of the rocks, and the stoneflies will get pretty big. You replicate that with flies going out. Because the stoneflies don't come up through the water column, you can't really use wet flies or dry flies, but after they come back and die, you can replicate them as spinners. So the spinners are going to have little white things sticking up out of the top, so you can actually see them when they're sitting in the water. So the mayflies are the easiest one for me to explain. Caddisflies are next. And I love talking about caddisflies because I took a class similar to this about 12 years ago. And this guy gave me a hook, and it was about that long, and it was a piece of chartreuse green chenille just wrapped on the hook. I looked at it and said, "What is this?" He goes, "It's a green weenie." And I went, "Yeah, no, seriously, what is it?" He goes, "No, it's a green weenie." And I went, "Okay, the joke's over." He goes, "Look, we're here in a class for 3 days. I'm going to give you a fly that's going to work, and it's going to catch fish." And I looked at it and went, "Okay, so what's it supposed to be? What's an inchworm look like?" About that long and green. It replicates what trout are already eating. Trout in Pennsylvania know about inchworms because apparently they have access to the internet, so they know about inchworms. So a caddis looks similar to an inchworm. A caddis is a little green worm that lives on the bottom, and we did this last week and it was amazing. The rock that we pulled out must have had 50 of them. So if you've ever been in a stream and you've seen these little tiny things that look like hollow twigs, that's a caddis housing. So the little caddis will roll on the substrate, any kind of debris on the bottom of the stream, and they'll create their own home. And then when they get bigger, they crawl out, they go over here, and they roll around, and they get a bigger home. And then they come up through the water column as they get really big, and they go through a pupa stage. And the big difference for me is when the dry fly presentation. So caddisflies will come up to the surface of the water, and they'll break out of their exoskeletal shell, and as soon as they break the surface film, they take off and go, and they do their boom chicka boom boom, they come back, and then they die. So the way I explain caddisflies is when you are looking at a body of water and you see like a divot, a fish will come up and will slurp underneath the water, and it creates a divot. You've seen that. Aha! So I'm the person that's suggesting they might be taking caddisflies if you see that on a trout stream. So one of the big trout flies used for caddis is called an elk hair caddis. Aha! And the elk hair caddis has hackle, which is feathers from either the chest or the tail of a rooster wrapped, and those give buoyancy. And then they have elk hair, which is tied in. The elk hair comes up at a 45-degree angle. Elk hair is hollow and buoyant. So when the fly hits the water, the hook comes down at a 45-degree angle. So the fish sees that and says, "Oh, it's a caddis coming up that's ready to break out of its shell." So they'll take the fly from underneath the water. So that's the way I explain caddisflies, which I read a 400-page book, and that's what I got out of 400 pages. Mayflies are pretty cool. Mayflies are the prevalent bug in most trout streams. And I'd always been taught that mayflies May has 3 letters, all mayflies have 3 tails. I did a class 2 years ago that I attended, And the guy was a biologist and said only 12 of the 14 families of mayflies have 3 tails. There are 2 families of mayflies that only have 2 tails. So I have to give that disclaimer now. So if you see a bug with 2 tails, it has the potential of being a mayfly. So mayflies live underneath the rock. They come up, they do their nymph stage, the little brown bugs, they come up through the water column. People call it wet fly fishing. So they're coming up through the water column. That's going to be a wet fly. So what happens with a mayfly, they come up to the surface film, and then they immediately break through. That's the big difference between a mayfly and a caddisfly. They'll immediately break through, and they'll come up and they'll flap their wings on the surface for 30, 45 seconds. Some people say it's to increase the blood flow through the wings. Some people say to dry them off. I'm not a biologist. I'll give you both things that I've heard. But when you see a fish come up out of the water and eat a bug, normally a mayfly. That's going to be your big difference. So those are going to be your 3 types of bugs that you're going to when you're out trout fishing. Now when you're fishing for any other species, fish eat worms. There's flies that look like worms, and then fish eat fish. There's flies that are going to look like bait fish, and then fish eat eggs. There's flies that are going to look like eggs. So it doesn't matter what you're fishing so long as it's something that's artificial. And again, the entomology thing, people have masters and doctorates in entomology. But I do it this way very simply. So these are some of the things that look like bugs that you're going to see in the water, and these are going to look like the bait fish. So I'll do it here, and I'll see if I can do this without the glasses. So this pink thing, that original fly was blood red, and it was a little bit shorter, and it's called a San Juan worm. So a guy was fishing in New Mexico on the San Juan River and said, see all these red worms? I should tie a fly that looks like that. That is unbelievably effective, because fish eat worms, right? I tie that in red, pink bubblegum, black, and brown, because most worms around here are brown. So I replicate what they're already eating. This is an egg. Fish eat eggs. So you may or may not be familiar with the term spawn sack. Spawn sacks are 8 to 10 eggs that are inside a little bag, and then they tie them up, because sometimes when fish release eggs, they clump together. So this represents a spawn sack, this orange one. So this is called a sucker spawn. And the pink one there is a sucker spawn in glitter material. Now this one here is the green weenie, and this one here is a green weenie, but you can see that I tied some feathers around it, so it makes it look like it's coming out of the shell. So that's the most hated fly in fly fishing. Can I get a picture of that? That's the most hated fly in fly fishing. Got it? That's called a mop fly. Everybody wash their car with those chenille things with the little things that hang out. That's what that is. To find a chenille car mat in chartreuse is like getting a winning lottery ticket, because you can't find them. Everything you're going to find now is going to be blue or dark brown. I personally like the tan ones because they look like grubs. Again, fish eat grubs. And I like the chartreuse ones because it represents that inchworm or an uncased caddis. The people that that will tell you it's not a real fly will go, but anytime you create a fly, you're representing what the fish is already eating. And they eat uncased caddis, and they eat inchworms. Aha. And over here, midges, and these are the little tiny nymphs. So those have beads, and those have shiny stuff in the little wing casing. And that just represents the small, small nymphs. And this is going to be a nymph and a mayfly. And that's another nymph. And this is an elk hair caddis. I like my elk hair caddis to have the elk hair go everywhere so it floats better. So that's an elk hair caddis. That's going to be a dry fly on top. So over here, bait fish patterns. This is going to be my favorite pattern. This is called a clouser minnow. So this is a bait fish pattern, but you look, and the weight of those 2 dumbbell eyes are on top of the hook. So when it sits on the water, it sits upside down. That way you're less likely to snag, less likely to lose them. This was created by a friend of mine, Bob Klauser. He had a fly shop right by 3 Mile Island on the lower Susquehanna, just outside of Harrisburg. This fly has caught over 100 species of fish around the world. And I like to show it off because he's a friend. He's done a lot for me. So you have to give credit to the people that have helped you out. So I fish these a lot because if you're going in a shallow body of water and you're here, it's going to snag, you're going to lose it. But with an elk hair, or not an elk, I'm sorry, with a Klauser minnow, it's going to ride hook up. You're less likely to lose the fly. So when I'm fishing off the beaches in shallow water, I'm using these so I don't lose them. As opposed to a woolly bugger that you're going to lose because it's going to be hook point down. And let's see if I can get that back in there. Yep. And woolly buggers. Yeah. Woolly bugger, and you can see the hook point on this is down. So this is just a woolly bugger. This is unweighted. So I do woolly buggers with weight and without weight. When they're unweighted, they sit closer to the surface. When they're weighted, they look like bait fish. So when they hit the water, they're going to drop. When you strip them, they come back up. Then they drop and they come back up. And one more bait fish pattern. Love this one. This is an offshoot of a guy grew up in North Springfield up by Erie and lives in Pittsburgh. His name is Jeff Blood. He ties a pattern called the White Death. So I have to change it because I'm never happy with a pattern. I always have to see what I can improve upon it. So the red was tied in the back. I like the red in the front because it represents the gill plate or injury. And then in the back, I want to tie in the material on the back the same color as this. So this is actually animal skin with the fur. And if this is the one that I think it is, this is possum fur. And the material is called Awesome Possum.
Awesome possum.
So I had to buy it because the name's just cool. But what this is representing is a dead bait fish because there's no weight. So when you cast it, it's going to stay on the surface. So fish eat dead fish too. So it's a very effective pattern and I like the color. So you can go crazy with fly tying, and apparently my knot isn't very good because the knot's coming undone. So you can go crazy with fly tying, you can go crazy with gear, whatever you want to do. Fly fishing is really cool because there's so many different arms you can do and everybody does what they want to do and they do what makes them happy. The flies we can talk for hours on flies. You can come up and tie with us. You can come down here. We'll have another event next April. We'll be doing a fly tying demonstration. Come down and join us then. And with the flies, questions on that? So if you looked, everything over here was a size 14 hook. Anybody know why? Come on, look at your notes. The 4X tippet, size 14. Aha! See what I just did there? And everything over here is a 6 and an 8, and I run these with straight leaders. I don't run tapers on the big ones because I don't want the taper leaders to break. And I just threw these together just so you have some type of visual. Normally I bring in my full sling pack with six different boxes and about 1,000 flies. It's a lot to look at. So I figured I would just take 1 or 2 flies out of every box just to show you. Questions on the flies? The fly tying is insane. It's really insane. You can really go crazy with that. So, everything we've talked about so far. The rods, the numbers, the backing, the line, the reels, the leader systems, the tippet rings, which I don't ordinarily talk about, but since you asked, it's no problem. So how do you connect it all together? How's our knot tying skills?
Needs improvement.
So I'll offer you this suggestion. I'll show you 2 knots. Very simple, very easy, very basic. You'll tie them once, you'll figure it out, it'll be good. So that you don't lose fish. Go to Wally World, buy a 10-pound spool of line for a couple bucks, go home, watch TV. Every time a commercial comes on, tie 3 or 4 knots. 15 minutes later, another commercial, tie 3 or 4 knots. If you need a suggestion, there's apps on your phone. The one that I use is called Fishing Knots. Who would have thought? It's a free app because I'm too cheap to spend money on an app. But there's so many apps out there. I just happened to grab that one because it was free. So there's great knots that are very, very strong. I'm going to be the guy saying, let me show you two that are simple, basic, easy. And we'll do those two, and it's going to be used for what we've got set up here. So I've got sample line and sample hooks for everybody. Now, if you look at this, this is kind of cool. What this is, it's running line from fly lines. And it's two different weights, two different colors. So it's different weights because you want to replicate the tapered leader down to the tippet, and it's two different colors so you can actually see what the knots look like. And I cried a little bit when I was cutting up those really, really expensive fly lines. It was kind of a bummer, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So we'll take those out of the bags, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two knots. I'll tie it the first time, and then everybody will tie it with me the second time, and then we'll go on to the second knot. Or we can tie with this if you'd prefer. Because let's face it, when you go out fishing, this is going to be the size of the line you're going to be using. But it's easier to teach with the larger lines. So the first one we're going to tie is a double surgeon's knot. And a double surgeon's knot will connect your tapered leader to your tippet. So when you're tying your tapered leader to your tippet, you want to cross them. You don't want to run them together. You want them to cross and overlap each other. So I'll do it this way first as a mirror image, and I'll turn around and tie it with everyone. So some people tie with their loops on the bottom, some people tie with their loops on the top. It doesn't matter. It's going to be the same knot anyways. Myself, there's two things that I do. I call this a pinch point. It gives me control of the lines no matter what I'm doing, no matter how I'm tying, and I always tie from back to front so I can actually grab the lines and I have better control over them. So with this, I'm going to go from the bottom. I'm going to have my pinch point here. Take the lines. Now you don't just watch. Take the lines from the front to the, or from the back to the front. I'm going to go through a second time, back to front. What this basically looks like, it's similar to a square knot. And just snug it down. So that's it. That'll hold your lines. That small line, that's the knot that's on here. From the indicator tippet to the tapered leader. That's the knot, the double surgeons. So this time, I'll turn around and I'll tie it with everyone else. So if you want to take your lines apart, and again, overlap them a little bit, about 6 inches or so. I have to go a little bit bigger on mine. So I will ask, don't cinch them down super, super tight because you have to take them apart and reuse them. Everybody's got their lines, we're good to go. Yeah, let's get a little bit more. So, okay, so make your loop and do your pinch. And then I like to go back to front once, pinch. Again, that way you have control over the line. Then back to front a second time. And then we pull. And you want to pull both sections at the same time. So let's see, how does that look? Yep, got it. Got it. And got it. And how are we doing down there? You're hiding, you want me to look.
You got this.
You got it. You got it there? So, this is one thing that I do that you may or may not have noticed when I showed you the leader system earlier. These are the tag ends. The tag ends are the extra line. Never, ever, ever cut them flush. Aha! When you cut them flush, the first time you do this, what happens? The tag ends get sucked in. The knot will fail. So if you notice, all my knots look kind of because I've got nubs on them. I leave mine extra long on purpose because I never, ever, ever want them to fail. Aha! Good information, huh? You got it? We're good? You got it. Okay, cool. So, you don't have to do this knot, but I'm going to show you this one real quick, just real quick.
Can we do that same one more time?
Yeah, no problem.
One more time.
No problem. Okay, so we cross. So I'm going to come over here, and this is important. I'm going to hold it here. I'm going to make my loop, and I'm going to hold it. Take both lines.
One, not the other side.
Yep, same one. Twice.
Yeah.
You got it. No problem. And then just snug it down a little bit. You're good to go. There you go.
Oh,
Cool.
jumping catfish.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
neat. So this is a slight variation from that, and I'll show you this one real quick. Again, you don't have to do this one, but it's kind of cool. It's good to know. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to loop once. And I'm going to loop twice. Now this is where it gets really cool. We might want to zoom in on this. I'm going to come through here and loop a third time. Tell me that's not cool. Now I'm going to cinch that down. Anybody want to guess what that's called? A triple surgeon's knot. See what I did there? So I do that for two reasons. First of all, I make a joke to see if anyone was listening to what I had to say, so if you're laughing, I know you're listening. Second of all, this is actually serious. When I fish for trout, my leader system is exactly the same. I run about a 12-foot leader, five-part taper. I run double surgeon's knots to connect, and I run a 2mm tippet ring. On my steelhead setup, I run a triple surgeons with a 3mm tippet ring. So if I can build a pre-made leader, I can look at the size of the tippet ring and go, oh, small and large, and I know if it's a trout leader or a steelhead leader. But I run a triple surgeons. I can't tell you if it's stronger. I can't tell you that it's a better knot, but it gives me a sense of security with that overhand loop, that third time. They don't fail, they don't break. So I'm going, you know what? It's good. At the end of the day, that's what's important. The best knot that you can possibly use. Again, there's 100 knots on that app, but the best one that you can find is something that you can tie well, something that you can tie quickly that does not fail. But this one's cool because everybody got it the first time. And this is what I use. Very simple, very easy, very basic. I use more difficult, more complicated knots and other things I do. When I set up walleye rigs, I use a different knot with a special tool. And I do this one when I'm tying on the leader system onto a fly line. There's a special tool that's also required for that. So there are other knots that I'm using, but this is simple, this is basic, this is easy. And when it's 21 degrees and your fingers are numb and they won't bend, you can tie this and not lose fish. So we got it, we're good to go. Okay, cool. So we're gonna do one more. So we've got our leader system built, right? So we've tied on a half dozen flies and we've added extra tippet on to keep it at 9 foot because we're running a 9-foot rod. So the other thing that we're gonna work on here is we need to tie the fly on. So I'll, again, show you this. Everybody does it differently. Not good, not bad, not right, not wrong. I'm gonna bring the line through the eye. And some people will take their hook or their lure or their fly and they'll twist the hook. I can't do that because I jab myself. If you want to do that, that's cool, but I can't. So I hold this, and then that way I keep that loop a little bit bigger. Now I'm only going to do this 4 times. I would suggest 5 with regular fishing line. But I'm going to make my loop through here. I'm going to come over and go 1, 2, 3, and 4. After 4 times, I'm going to come over here. That little loop that I pinched off with my finger, I'm going to come over here. That is a clinch knot. That's the conventional knot that most conventional gear guys will use. They use either 5 or 6 wraps. Some guys call it a fisherman's knot, but it's a clinch knot. But this is the important thing. Since we're fly fishermen, we have to improve upon what the conventional guys are doing. So I'm going to take that loop through there and run the tag through it again. So there's another extra half hitch through there. Can everybody see what I did there? So I made my loops, came down through, and then put it up through that loop again. And I'm going to tighten that down. Does anyone want to guess what that's called?
You improved it, didn't you?
So what's the knot called? An improved clinch knot. Again, I made a joke to see if you were listening. That's the knot that I use to tie on my flies. 5 wraps, it's an improved clinch knot. And there's people in the industry that say that an improved clinch knot over a regular clinch knot takes too much time. I do this because I enjoy it. I'm not a, I don't want to use the term professional, but I do get paid on occasion. So I do this because I enjoy it, but this is a simple, easy, basic knot that works well. And everyone want to do this with me again? So we're gonna, and again, if you wanna spin the hook, you can. I like to hold it, but when I hold it, I'm pinching so that loop stays bigger. Because if you twist, that loop's gonna get tight. So I always hold the fly, and then that way the loop stays bigger. So we're gonna go 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And then we're gonna bring it up to the loop. And again, we have to improve upon it, and we're gonna come out and do that. So, this is the discussing part of the day. Anybody fish with their grandpa when they were a little kid? And grandpa said, spit on the line, because it's good luck. Grandpa was wrong. Sorry to ruin that image. The reason that he's wrong, I explained it a slightly different way. It's not about good luck. When you take the line and you tie a knot, you're rubbing plastic against plastic. The friction creates heat. The heat will weaken the plastic. The saliva acts as a lubricant. So when you spit on it, it acts as a lubricant, so less friction, less heat, less weakening of the plastic. It keeps the knot stronger. Now, I will normally spit on it, or I'll put the line in my mouth, except if I'm fishing directly downstream from a wastewater treatment plant. And then I just dip it in the water. But don't laugh, there's about 3 or 4 places up in Erie where you fish that you're downstream from a wastewater treatment plant. So I am careful when I put line in my mouth, because I never know what's in the water. Does everyone have this knot? We're good? I didn't even look, everybody tied it and undid it already. So no, it's all good. No, if you did it, that's cool. Okay, yeah, we got a twister here. It's all good.
That's the knot he's been tying since I taught him how to.
It's a great knot. It really, really is. And that's why I like teaching these two, because they're simple, they're basic, they're easy, and everyone can do it the first time that they tie it. There's better knots, there's stronger knots, but these are simple, these are basic, these are easy.
You prefer that over the Palomar knot?
Yeah, because this is easy. Palomar, a lot of guys run that because once you get to a certain age, you need cheaters, and if you don't have cheaters, or if you're out in the water, a lot of saltwater guys, a lot of bass guys run polymers because it's just easy. You can just do it and twist. And it's just a single overhand, and you run it through. But in my world, you're using a lot of tippet material when you do that, because you're cutting off a foot. I mean, tippet material in the spool, you're getting 30 meters of tippet, which this is 100. You're getting 30 meters of tippet, and it costs you $16. So every time you tie a knot, if you're cutting a foot off, it's going to cost you a fortune. But if I do this, I'm cutting off that much. So, and again, not promoting a particular brand. I like these spools because it's 100 meters. I used to go through at least, and that one's empty too. So yeah, both of these are empty. I used to go through at least a spool a year. And with 100 meters, it takes me a couple years to burn through one. So I'm on my 3rd one of the 100 meters right now. So what questions have we got? I can see the wheels are turning, but you're just not quite sure what you want to ask. No, go ahead.
No, I think I do better whenever I'm tinkering and actually working different things.
Yeah, so my suggestion is going to be get the app, sit at home, watch TV. Oh, it's a commercial. Okay, I got 2 minutes. Open up the phone and tie 3 or 4 knots. That's what I did to get better, because the first year I fished, I lost count of how many times I have a fish on, all of a sudden, boom, and I'd pull up the leader system, and the leader would be all curly. The curly leader means that the knot failed. It just came apart. So when it's cut off straight, it actually breaks. The fish went over a rock, the line got sheared, things happen. But when it coils, it means that the knot failed. So are we good? Lots of information. I don't want to confuse you, but there's only 3 or 4 things you really need to remember. The hook size determines the leader system. You know, the numbers all go together, and why the numbers are important, because you don't want to mix. You don't want to put 8-weight line on a 4-weight reel because it won't physically fit. The reel is too small. The 8-weight line has so much more mass, it just won't physically fit. Okay, good timing. We're ready to go out and cast.
So when you do your rod blanks, I always suggest have your guides on the upper section at 90 degrees, one down below, straight down. Put it together, twist and push. It puts a helical burr in, so it's less likely to fall out. If you ever had that happen, it's not as fun as it sounds. So come up 90 degrees, twist and push. Come up 90 degrees, twist, push. And it'll lock together and it's less likely to come apart. Now for this, when you put the reel on, there's always going to be a slot. And normally, well, with this has a graphic, so I know where the slot is. Put the reel seat in, push it in, and you're going to have a slot on this backside. You can bring that up, and some have one, some have two. Don't bring them up together. Do the first one first. Make sure they're separated. Snug it. And then do the second one. It'll lock it in. Now when you are doing the line, I like to pull out enough line so that I'm not going to have issues. You can actually do this with conventional gear also. So it's a great idea to actually fold the fly line and bring it up through the guide. So when you do that and you drop it, the loop will stop. It won't come all the way back down where you have to start all the way again. So it'll make your life significantly easier. And that also works with conventional fishing line. But for the fly line, it's great because, again, you still have that leader that you have to pull up through here. So it's important that you don't miss guide because it won't cast as well if you miss the guides. And once you get into fly fishing, if you decide that you like this hobby, for me, the thing about fly fishing is that if you're a gadget person, this is the world's greatest hobby. There's a tool for everything. But one of the most useless tools, in my opinion, is this. So they have two pieces of leather that they put together, and it's called a leader straightener. I think that when you do that, the leather puts too much heat into this leader. So I just run it through my fingers and straighten it. You can see how coiled up it is, how straight that is now. I just run it through there and it straightens it. So I'm stretching it a little bit, and just a little bit of heat keeps it straight. So I have a lot less coils in there now, just from that little bit of straightening. And that's how you set that up. So now we're going to go out and cast. So I practice so that it is effortless. As a guy that likes distance, I want to cast a lot of different distance by a lot of depth. That's my whole thing. So any cast I make is going to be effortless. I can show you what you're probably used to seeing on the screen. Well, let me say it a different way. I'll demonstrate how not to do it. So as you can see, I'm doing the exact same thing as I did before. I'm going to use the fiberglass rod so you have a better visual of the loading and the unloading, or the bending and the unbending. The term is load and unload. But you're still bending the rod and you're unbending. And this rod is just fun. It's fishing. It's supposed to be fun. You're going to be miserable in your leisure time. See the ball. Okay, everybody laughs, so you're all listening. That's a good thing. So now, I'm going to make that steady acceleration to a quick stop. Steady acceleration, and we can see how the rod bends a lot more. Net, accelerate, stop, accelerate, stop. Now, the motion has to be exaggerated because the rod is so soft, it bends a lot more. So you'll see the movement is in that more visual than with the graphite rod. The graphite rod is basic effortless. So you can see that steady acceleration to the quick stop. Can we see that okay? So the cool thing about this is, when the rod is bent, I don't know how well you can get this on video. When the rod is bent, the fly line will take the place of where the rod tip is pointed. So wherever the rod tip is pointed, where the fly line is going to follow. So the rod loads, 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 comes over here, and it unloads. When it unloads, what happens is, it comes down to here. Comes down to here, and it unloads. The fly line was up there. That's where the rod tip is pointed. When the rod tip stops, it unloads. Then this is what you're trying to achieve. Again, difficult to see on the ground, The combination of explaining it, visual here and the visual in the air where you're not looking into the sun, will explain this better. So the more the rod bends, the tighter your loop will be. In my world, I have this term, it's called sexy loops. When the loops are really tight and they just look cool and they're great, it's not a practical fishing cast. It looks neat, but it looks neat. On the other hand, if you do this and the rod doesn't bend, it's going to look like this. We call that a windshield washer cast, where the line just goes straight up in the air. When it comes down, it piles right in front of you. Two things happen. You lose accuracy, and if there's any type of wind, instead of the line going here, it'll end up over there. That'll be bad. So again, I was going to show you how not to do it. So watch. You see how much this bends. Watch, it's not going to bend at all. The rod's not bending at all. See how it piles? But when I do that same thing again, you'll see how much it bends, how that loop forms. Is that a good visual? Everybody can see that. Okay. So that's that steady acceleration to the quick stop. So the third principle is straight line path with a rod tip. That straight line path was demonstrated here. The rod travels and then it comes over here and it comes over here. So in theory, the rod is going to go from here to here to here, and then the loop forms. So it forms a straight line path through the air. Slow motion video has disproved that, but to the naked eye, it still looks like it's going in a straight path. I'm going to explain that slightly differently. When I'm casting, it's going to look like it's coming at, right at. Everybody can see that. It's going to come right at. Everything's in alignment. So when you're getting more distance, what happens is you'll see a lot of people do this. And it's all wrist. That's going to be a bad thing. So it's a bad thing in two ways, because this rod, the rod will load and unload. You can actually see it's a spread. It's 180 degrees. You're going to come up and all of a sudden the rod's going to twist at 90. All that energy can't go from here to here. It's going to go from here equal and opposite. So when you go 90, you lose all that. They do it. You don't know why they do it. Now, the thing that I say here is this is a comb. You've got the rod, you've got the guide, you've got the line, you've got the reel. So you've got 4 different planes you're dealing with. So if you're going to cast to the side, cast to the side and always point the reel in the direction of your cast. So that way, everything's in alignment. Straight line plane. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's number 3. Number 4 is when you have a little bit of line out, your arc. So the arc is from when the rod starts to bend to when it stops to bend. That arc is going to be very small. And then when you have more line out, the arc gets bigger, bigger, and bigger. Now, that's important because when you have more line out, you have to pause longer so that line can unroll and straighten. Everybody saw that on the cast. So, 4 and 5, some people combine them. I like to make sure that they're kept separate. Short line, small arc, short pause. Longer line, bigger arc, bigger pause. That's number 4. 5, there has to be pause. You have to let the line unstraight. Some people combine it, but for me, it's important enough to keep them separate because no matter what you're doing, size of the fly, how much line you have out, the type of wind, the plane that you're casting, you have to eliminate the slack and you have to have a pause. Those other 3 in the middle will change every single cast. So, when we did that earlier, I am going to pick up the line. So if the line is straight, when you pick it up, when the rod tip breaks the horizontal plane at 9 o'clock, comes to about here. That's going to be about eye level at about 10 o'clock. Whatever term you want to use. When you get to that 10 o'clock position, you're going to lift up slowly. When you get to there, and the fly starts to move right there, you start your cast. Steady acceleration to a quick stop. Steady acceleration to a quick stop. So, in terms of making it easy, it's a 4-part cast. Pick up, lay down. Pick it up, back cast. Forward cast, lay it down. Now the cool thing about laying it down is a lot of people want to jam the rod down into the water right away. What I said earlier, the line goes wherever the rod tip is pointing. So if you're able to stop at eye level, it's going to be a mirror image cast. You're going to start and stop in the same places. If you want to stop, let the line unroll. When the fly straightens and it starts to drop, take the tip, follow it to the water. And what ends up happening, the line will hit the water straight. Aha! Aha! I just saw the light go on. Two things that happen. You're preparing yourself for your next cap because there's no slack. And when you want to set the hook, right there, I've set the hook. I just did what, 3 to 4 feet. So that pickup and laydown to me is critical. I'm really a big fan of understanding the pickup and laydown because every other cast that you're ever going to do is a pickup and laydown, just amplified. So again, it's going to be, let's get the line slack eliminated, pick up, back cast, forward cast, lay it down. And you can see how I'm not jerking. I'm not coming up jerking and stopping and doing this. It's the same motion. I'm just going slow, 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 a little more dynamic, dynamic, slow, slow, slow. So the way I explain the casting motion is we're going to shake hands. I'm going to come over here, and when I come up, some of you have hats, that's a good thing. We're going to come up the upper arm, the elbow. When I get to here, I'm just going to do that and bend, straighten the wrist. Some people will say bend. I like to say straighten. I'm just going to straighten. And that last little bit at the end is what makes the rod flick and stop. Stop. I like to salute right here with the thumbnail on the brim of the hat. I'm going to come forward at the end. I'm going to bend again. And that will give it that stop, that quick stop. So the motion is the steady acceleration of the quick stop. So you're going to come up, accelerate, stop, accelerate, stop, accelerate, stop, accelerate, stop, accelerate, stop, accelerate, stop. Fall down. No problem. We got this.